Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with yet another castover. And today we have Alexhandr as the Sunglow Zerg against neblime as the Green Zerg. This is on Equilibrium. This is a case where we have yet another opportunity to talk about ZVZ. It's been a while, actually, since we've casted a ZVZ, I think. Maybe something came up in the... No, I guess not in Ascension, because I was just thinking about the playoffs that we recently had. Mesk didn't play. He played as random in... Or no, did he play as random in the second one? I don't think so. Well, anyway, I can't recall anything off the top of my head immediately, but I think this might be the first ZVZ in a while. We'll see what Alexhandr ends up doing against neblime here. There are actually two games that we have to cast today, so the second one will be on a different map. I think it might be on Sequestered Synagogue, if I'm not mistaken, but we'll take a look. And it looks like they're both going for a similar opener. They're both going Quasrock. Now, neblime was harvesting gas a little bit sooner. I'm not 100% sure what his plans are for that, but I imagine they'll both go Larvosk afterwards. This was played on pre-release. We have some updates, some balance updates that are also available on release. This is with the selection extender, of course. Because if you guys saw the hour-and-a-half long cast over I did with Solstice versus Shambler, you'll have noticed that. So neblime will go ahead and scout a little bit later. Obviously, his build order has already been spotted, but he doesn't know what his opponent is doing. So there's the Kagrant that will turn into a Larvosk. One of the changes here is to increase the cost of the Larvosk. It is now 100 minerals instead of 75. Yeah, that's correct. At the same time, the treasury became 125 minerals instead of 100. So we're sort of like pushing back that like extra, parallel production queue in the early game, specifically for workers for Terran, but obviously it's also something that Zerg use for either military or workers. It unlocks them the ability to create additional workers if necessary. Now, the one thing I can say about Alexhandr is he could have guarded his ramp with the 4 Zethar cores that he had and stopped his opponent from getting in to scout certain things. At this level, it's probably not that important, but I think neblime is familiar with things like checking the worker count, obviously checking the building count and stuff. He also left the Zethar core behind here that I think he'll have figured it out right then. And he is building more Zethar cores. So at this point, his worker was already in the base and scouted that indeed there is a Larvosk. So very similar build orders at this stage. However, it's going to be a little bit before I think neblime equals the Zethar core count. I think the delay between his opponent reaching his base is going to be enough there. And we have our first deviation from the build here with a Hydrock Den coming out from neblime. That's where a lot of his gases ended up going. And there are 2 more workers here as Alexhandr is apparently going to rally one of those in. I think that's probably a missed rally. He's not going to expand or anything, so we'll see what he ends up doing. He's pulled him back and sent him on to the workers. A lot of people will get flustered because they'll like accidentally have moved their units halfway through or something, and they'll just be like, well, I guess I'm going to expand now. But Alexhandr wisely realizes that ZVZ, it can swing. Of course, he needs to get home and start guarding his ramp. Could be hold positioning over here. Obviously, he's going to start to do that a little bit here. He's doing his best, and the Quasilisks are here. This is the handiwork of Solstice. We get to see a first shot of the new one, and I mean, tell me this doesn't look like ZVZ to you. Guarding a ramp with Zethar cores, except instead of Hydras, you got Quasis back at home. Now, we do have our first our first opportunity for a non-Quas unit to end up coming out. He's trying really hard to type Quas, but he's not quite capable. Loads of them, indeed. And the worker counts are actually dead even here. Alexhandr will go ahead and station his units on there. So one of them has stuck around. In general, I imagine against Z, and you probably always want to like walk over your town center marker real quick, see, hey, do I need to like protect myself against that? Obviously, one Zethar core running into your base is not going to be the end of the world. However, it could have maybe spotted some vision here and there. A couple of units spotting around here. One of them does end up going to the... Oh, it looks like it was headed to the bottom right and instead is going to burrow around that ramp. Now, in CMBW, your burrowed units provide less vision, as you can see, but it's still enough to give a little bit of an insight here. I'm not sure what this Droleth is doing, but he's hanging out. And there is an Izira core here. So Izira cores have a multi-attack and a bounce attack. So you can imagine, like, each one of their attacks can bounce, and they can attack more than one unit at a time. So that alone is going to be pretty significant. Now, there is a Hydrock Den coming up from Alexhandr, and he's going to try to expand. When you build on top of burrowed units in CMBW, as you can see, apparently this one gets stuck because of decollision. But generally speaking, they unburrow and start attacking your unit. So he's actually going to go ahead and start doing that now, which will alert and distract Alexhandr. But he wisely only sends a single Zethar core over before he reveals the fact that there are indeed Izira cores out on the map. And that is for neblime. So he's going to wisely back off. That's pretty good heads-up play coming out of Alexhandr here. And otherwise, obviously, neblime just taking the opportunity to drolleth up. He's drolling up, you could say. The main thing that he's going to accomplish here is he has a higher quality army. And so he's going to now transition a little bit more heavily into the macro game. But he's not expanding. This could still be a situation where, depending on how he approaches some of these units, I mean, this Zethar Core is actually providing a lot of vision for him. This is an opportunity where neblime does have kill pressure out, but there is an Izira Core coming. It's not on the front lines, and it doesn't respond very fast. Now the Izira Core charging on forward with 2 armor on this version. His Izira Core on the other side, Alexander's gets burst down by the Hydras, and all of the Zethar Cores were occupied with each other. So only now does one of them, a very, very poor target fire here, because one of them was almost low and did die. The other one, the other one was so low that it was within 24 points of health. I do think that that was really one of the difference makers there. I mean, if he had moved the Zethar Cores past each other, the Quasis plus the Izira Core could have taken care of neblime's Zethar Cores, but of course the Izira Core is not in a position. Then you could have put the Zethar Cores onto the Hydras. They would have struggled a little bit there. I feel like that could have been something to think about there, but alas, unfortunately for our homie, that was not to be. Now, it's worth noting in this update, Hydras did get buffed as well. They got adjusted. They deal 1 less damage than they used to, but they do have a little bit less HP and a little bit less mineral cost. They're down to 75. That might still not be enough. I actually think they might end up being very powerful yet again. But we'll find out if we get to see more results from them in just a moment when we head on over to Game 2. All right, this is actually... What the fuck is that? Patriotic Freedom! That's not a color that you're even supposed to be able to roll, so that's pretty amazing. Check out his name, dude. All right, well, that's an amazing color. It was never finished, so get ready for your eyes to fucking burn. Anyhow, this is, of course... yeah, Nemesis Station. That's what it is. And it's... Oh my goodness, look at those eggs, dude. Well, anyway, it's going to be a continuation of the ZVZ. Neblime chatting away, trying to figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, Alexander's saying he's never going to play T. He's never played T, never has, never will. He's Sunglow again. That's actually kind of funny. Benno did... He is in the thing there. Benno is observing. This map wasn't in the first Ascension, so Neblime is totally wrong. He's thinking of Repulsion, which is a map that does have you start in similar spawns, but it's a little bit different visually. And of course, layout-wise is very, very different, so we'll see about that one. Phew, I can't look at that base, but don't worry, I won't have to for very long. I'm sure, very much sure that this will be a very different experience here. In fact, I think both players are going to save up for a Zorkis, which is really funny. I don't know what happened. This is the third match, so there was a second match, but unfortunately they had I think they had a crash that I later on went in and fixed in the same day, which is nice. Oh, honestly, if you guys get a crash, I mean, I'm sure it sucks because you lose access to the ability to finish the game. Really, really awesome that I'm able to fix these pretty easily now. So send them your way, like send them my way rather. And I'll send the updates your way. I'll send the fixes. Anyhow, Hydroct incoming compared to Zorka's Shroud. Hydras, again, are a little bit more spammable now. So that's something to keep in mind and something that we may adjust over time. Alexhandr was just hanging out. He had totally forgotten about that worker. And Neblime, as patriotic and as free as he is, was not quite capable. Dude, I can't believe his color showed up. So messed up. I'll have to remember to ban that because that's really messed up. I forgot that color even existed in the game files, but alas. So it's double Skith. This is against a Gorg. I guess? Oh my goodness, dude, look at this. Dude, all right. I mean, it looks really ugly, but tell me that this isn't at least interesting. Like, you would never want to fucking see this in your life. But if you are going to look at it and look at that fucking egg, I mean, just check it out, man. Just see what's going on. Do you feel the freedom? That's so messed up. Well, we have different build orders now anyway. So it'll be a Gorger Core followed by a Lakizalisk. I think the Skiths will fight the Gorger Core. The Skither Core is now obviously 2 armor still. That actually seems like an oversight by me. I think I meant to make it 1 armor. But either way, did they just dodge each other? I don't know what was going on. There was like some star sense happening. Neblime's going to go ahead and try to expand. It's not going to get canceled. The Lakizalisk is out, but that's not going to be very useful. So off he goes. And the Gorger Core is not going to be too interested. But this might be a really quick game here. I'm not sure. The Gorger Core is not going to be too interested there. Hey, what's up? What's up, buddy? He's going to try to disregard that. start tickling the Spraith. This isn't bad because you're also getting ambient damage on workers, which obviously could be switched over. And meanwhile, this is happening. So our worker count is definitely favoring Alexhandr, but unfortunately for him, he just moved his Skither Core right in front of the Gorger Core there. So that didn't really help him out that much. He could have been attacking the Spraith this whole time if he wanted to like guarantee more damage, because actually there is no Gorger Core coming. Like neblime didn't have the money to do it. So that's really funny to me. I think he was spinning trying to burrow or trying to move into a location. A third Skither Core on the way. It could have been a fourth, but obviously he like idled it over the Gorger Core AoE. Now I'm going to go ahead and get ready to expand himself. Is there anything coming from the Neblime? What is he doing? I think this might be a ZVZ clown show, and I guess this is a fitting color for it. Dude, I don't think either of our players know what's going on. We've got an idle worker here with a telepathic fucking mineral node. I always say telepathic, even though obviously you would say telekinetic if it's like being mind lobbed, because I actually find it funnier that it's like wrong, but obviously it is wrong. The player color really gets me. Meanwhile, there is an expansion going down back at home. Neblime is somehow even in workers. I think maybe Alexhandr is doing some silly stuff here. Now again, you have to be pretty watchful for the Gorger Core. It's pretty lethal. He's trying to do his best to micro it out and whittle it down. He's going to lose one. He'll lose the other if he's not careful. Oh, one more shot would have done it there, actually, because it does 8 with 2 armor pen. So this is really unfortunate because that Gorger Core could turn on any time and just kill that fucker. So yeah, is he doing the calcs? Is he figuring it out? Oh, he spun! He gave him an opportunity, but it wasn't enough. Damn it. It's true. Looked away. Well, this game is very silly already. This is a game where, if it were not for the patriotic freedom, this would be a Greth game, I think, honestly. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Maybe I'm too dismissive too early. We might see some exciting plays in the future. This fucked up color is just gonna destroy my composure every time I look at Neblime's face. Well, he does have an expansion up, and he has workers on it a little bit sooner. Now in CMBW, you only get reduced efficiency on the third worker on a node. So if you like triple saturate your geyser, for example, that third worker is going to be about half as efficient as the other two. Whereas on the mineral nodes, it's going to be a lot longer before you are at maximum saturation, or like minimum saturation, I guess, minimum effective saturation, before you hit diminishing returns, basically. So you don't need to split workers as easier or as quickly, but it really doesn't hurt in the long run anyway, because it's only going to take a little bit of mining time away, and at this level, that's not really going to matter. Meanwhile, if you do transfer the workers eventually anyway, like, you might end up having less effective mining time on your workers if they keep coming from your main to transfer to your nat, so it might still be worthwhile to begin with. Now, meanwhile, Alexhandr, he doesn't have hardly any workers in his main. He's being very defensive. And on top of it all, he has loads of larvae that he's not able to spend just yet. So in his position, particularly since he does have the Skither Cores out, I would probably be a little bit more convinced that I need to, pressure on the map and then build workers behind it. He's clumping up here, but he doesn't realize this Gorger Core is almost dead. So he can definitely execute that guy pretty easily. So the Zorkish Shroud is just toast. There was only one additional anti-air unit built. So there goes that. And he's going to do his best to try to... He could have harassed that from other angles, I'm pretty sure, but he's going to do his best to just be a little bit annoying. There's a Spraith Colony, Spraith Cesium. This is starting to look a little bit like ZVZ and normally, honestly. And that's probably because Neblime's very familiar with how StarCraft 1 works in general, so it doesn't really surprise me. Now, there are some Izira cores. The Lekizalisk does not have any armor pen, so technically getting high armor units is useful. The problem is I'm not 100% sure it's going to matter too much because the return damage is still quite considerable. That being said, there's no tech structure here at all for our poor Neblime. He may realize that at some point and say, hey, maybe I should build a structure. And maybe I should build it... Well, no, he's got his Spraith Season. He wants to rebuild it exactly where he lost it. Now, there's an Ovoleth over here. It doesn't have anything in it, but it will be hunted down. And in the meantime, Alexhandr setting up some Skith, not really patrol routes, but he's just looking around, seeing what else he might be able to find. Neblime has not significantly more workers, but, 4 or 5 more workers than his opponent. But again, he's only able to build workers right now, so that kind of makes sense. Whereas, obviously, Alexander is like, hey, I'm going to idle a bunch of my workers, but I'm also going to build a lot of units because I have the ability to. And I guess the big forehead strategy here is that Neblime is saying, I don't need to build military units. I've got some Lekizilisks and some Cesians. Very reasonable, honestly. Oh, yet another Ovaleth is going to get tickled to death. Would you be a part of the Patriotic Freedom Brood? What do you guys think? I guess it would be an organ in our lore. It wouldn't be brood. There's a lot of idle workers in this game. You know, if I didn't know any better, I'd think it was back to one of those replay desyncs, but nope. This is just how it is. Now, there is a Hydrock Den coming up. A little bit cheaper on the minerals to build that than the Quasrock. Dude, Neblime's APM color. Good luck reading that, buddy. Yeah. Actually, the coloring system, the color picker has been improved recently. That's something that we shipped to release. We happened to have this occur, so it's a little bit silly. But basically, the color picker is now picking for contrast a little bit more and for human-readable colors as well, as opposed to emphasizing heavily just like raw RGB values or whatever. So in the past, we would get stuff like light green versus dark green. It's much less likely. I think it's actually not even possible for that to happen in 1v1s anymore. Whereas meanwhile, if you compare that to something like team games, I don't know how robust the algorithm is for that right now, but Vic was working on that recently, and he was able to get it into a place that he was satisfied with. And given his level of knowledge, if he's satisfied with it, then I'm satisfied. And I'm sure I will continue to be satisfied with it as I evaluate it further. So he has all the tier 1 options, Neblime. And there is a third base coming for his opponent. Got a lot of gas. So he's actually pretty close to being able to tech up to tier 2. Now, a third base is going to be in motion here for Alexhandr. I'm not sure what Neblime wants to do. Does he want to... Because if the Droleth was caught here, obviously the Skits could have killed it before it was made into something. As of right now, they're getting damage, but Lekizilisks and all Zerg units regenerate twice as fast while burrowed, and they regenerate twice as fast, I think, compared to StarCraft 1 anyway. So it's a pretty heavy amount of regeneration. Meanwhile, there is a tier 2 available, but we'll have to wait for Alexhandr to remember that he has money, and then he'll be able to spend it. Some Nathrakors are going to be scouting around to see what's up. Skithrakor will accept that one. This one down here. Nathrakors don't have the best vision, but he'll definitely see the Kagra. And yeah, he's figured that out. He's just going to keep scouting. He's like, okay, well, my opponent's slightly ahead of me on the expansion timing. He won't necessarily know that he's ahead of him on the worker timing, but... he's also going to reveal his Spraith tech, so that's something to be thought of. A lot of Ovaleths being made here. Decent number anyway. I think that's the third Ovaleth that Neblime has made. Yeah, it looks like it. Zerg don't really have detection. Like, if he was worried about he was going to get a Lekizilisk all-in or something, I could imagine the Ovaleth's coming in handy there. But as it currently stands, that's not the case. And dude, Alexhandr could have teched up, like, I think 2 minutes ago. It's a little bit surprising that he isn't in a position to do that yet. And remember, the selection extender is live. We're finally going to be able to check that out in this capacity a little bit more. A couple of Hydras getting marauded. Absolutely annihilated. But that's okay. The Hacharosk, meanwhile, just took about 75 points out. So not really too much there. Will he tech up? He will. Okay, so tier 2 is coming. I'm checking out the... Another thing that I should definitely do as we see yet another idle worker. I think this one's idle too. That's unfortunate from the rallies. Something else that I would love to do is upgrade or change the building animations for tech nodes. Like make custom ones for the Terran ones. That's probably going to be a lot easier. And then somehow make like custom ones for the Zerg ones as well. Like obviously, maybe I can just kit bash stuff from the big construction versus the small construction to make like a medium construction, which I then exclusively use for tech, for like the Othstol and the Iral. I think that would be good for at-a-glance readability. And, you know, the fact that it's similar to the advisor notifications, which now say upgrade complete for Terran or evolution complete for Zerg. And eventually it's going to say tech up complete or something like that for Terran when I replace the advisor. I think the same will actually be true for the Zerg. I'll come up with some fancy way of saying it, but I'm not 100% sure how it'll look exactly. I just know it's going to be something different. The fact that the advisor lines exist on a separate plane and are unique to that one thing is like kind of indicative of how impactful it is, right? And so I think that would be a nice way to show that, hey, this is actually really significant. So the Skits are moving around here and there. This one's just going to run straight into death. So he's going to reveal that indeed there is some stuff over here. There's an Ovaleth moving around here as well. It looks like maybe just to exist, just to be around. And yeah, indeed, Neblime was teching up as well. Now, his is about halfway done when the tech up for Alexhandr is already here. And he's got 1,000 gas, so he could definitely be like fully saturating the space. He's adding another macro hatch, which makes sense. He could be using tech. He could be upgrading his Hydrock. He could be getting a Muthrock or a Matravel. He could be accessing more of the tech tree, basically. Now, this Skipper Core is going to very importantly spot the army movement. And this one will also spot this army movement. So it's not coming across the bridge, which will either... This is a point where like Alexhandr can kind of do one of two things. He can counterattack, which again, he's going to be walking straight into a whole bunch of Lakizilisks, or he can try to anticipate the army movements or generally attack into this area, right? So there is a Zoryusta. Actually, there are Zoryusta for all players. In this update, Rilla cores only collide with themselves, so they won't be de-colliding anymore, because that was generally a little bit silly. However, this is a lot more of a durable man fight than you would normally see out of ZVZs, because the units have a lot more durability. There were a lot more Zoryusta here for neblime, and I think that really did turn the tide, because all of his DPS in the Hydras was pretty much free to do whatever it wanted. And at that context, you know, you look at that and you think, holy shit. Oh, yes, I see. This is where I saw some messages from Alexhandr on this subject where he was rather tilted at his own level of performance there. And, you know, Zoryuses are very durable. I mean, they're 200 minerals, but they have even more health than their mineral cost, which who knows if that's reasonable. But the Hydras, on the other hand, can attack into them. They do have 2 armor pens, so they're only getting 1 damage reduced from the attack. And at this point, it's just a little bit too late for the circuits. If these were Scortriths already, I would actually give this fight pretty handily to Alexhandr. But the number of Hydras here are pretty significant. Now, the circuits are done, or at least one of them is done already. And the Hydras are kind of far away. Again, but the response time here is a little bit slow. Like, these could have been more than halfway done towards circuits. Yeah, there are some Izira cores. You'll see them speed up towards wounded allied Zoryusta after they drop below half HP. But again, all these Hydras getting so much opportunity to get lots of attacks off. Yeah, some of them are attacking Droleths or whatever, but there's just not that much meat over here left. And meanwhile, look at all the Zoryusta. There's still 3 of them up. Yeah, one of them is like 1 or 2 hits away from death, but there's nothing here to attack it, so it's actually A-okay. And there goes the 3rd base. Meanwhile, a 4th one's being taken by neblime, and GG's just called right there. So ultimately, I don't think... I remember seeing somewhere that Alexhandr felt like he was he felt self-defeated or something to that effect after the Zoryus incident on the right-hand side. I think really he could have had a significant advantage in this game if he had drolled up a little bit more, went into a bit more worker production. Obviously, he could have won a lot of those early micro fights a lot easier, and then the game would have just been his by default. But when those didn't go his way, or assuming those didn't even happen to begin with, because the game was a little bit more, like the player skill or whatever was a little bit more sensible, assuming a more standard game, like the weaknesses I saw from Alexhandr here were related to his spending. But both of our players exit with relatively similar resource counts, although Alexander's gas is egregious. He can almost hit tier 3. But in a real game, obviously, you concede a lot of advantages by not spending your money. And I don't think it was deliberate that Alexhandr didn't spend his money. I think maybe he got flustered. He started doing the Shambler special of typing a little bit in the middle of the game and so on and so forth. So all in all, obviously, neblime ends up taking it. Even his score screen looks patriotic and free. And you know what? I mean, if I could make that color smoothly have a gradient instead of being AIDS, I would obviously love to have patriotic freedom as a special color that you could use, but obviously we can't have a real game with that happening yet again. So shout out to neblime for rolling that. The one and only. He's Australian, so he's not even American, and he defeated an American, which is like that's a little spooky. That's a little silly. But yeah, beyond that, we'll be back for some more castovers. Stay tuned. Obviously with less freedom, unfortunately, because I got to remove that color. I can't look at. Help me.